how river warriors changed history forever. What happens when a tribe of river warriors swims straight into the heart of an empire? Why did the mighty British chariots, once feared across the land, crumble like soggy biscuits at the banks of the Medway? This isn't just a battle. It's a cinematic clash of strategy, betrayal, and raw courage. From underwater ambushes to midnight melees, from political theater in Rome to guerrilla warfare in the Welsh hills. This is the story of how the Roman Empire cracked open Britain like a war-scarred oyster. So grab your shield, tighten your sandals, and prepare to dive into a tale where rivers run red, loyalty is tested, and one speech saves a man's life. Because once you start watching, you won't want to stop. It was the year 43 AD. The Roman Empire, fresh off a bout of internal chaos and imperial musical chairs, had just handed the reins to Claudius, a man whose limp and stammer made him the butt of palace jokes, but whose mind was sharper than a gladius. Claudius needed a win. Not just any win, a legacy-defining, statue-worthy history book immortalizing triumph. And what better place to carve his name than the misty, mineral-rich, rebellion-prone island of Britain? Enter the Betavians, a Germanic tribe with a resume that read, expert in river warfare, swamp navigation, and making enemies regret their life choices. These weren't your average auxiliaries. They were amphibious shock troops, trained to swim in armor and strike like waterborne wolves. Britain at the time was a patchwork quilt of tribal kingdoms, each with its own customs, grudges, and suspicious glances toward Rome. Some tribes in the south traded with the empire, swapping tin and furs for wine and shiny things. Others, like the Catui, also known as the Cativellauni, were less interested in diplomacy and more interested in dominating their neighbors like it was a sport. The Catui, under the late King Cunobelinus, Rome's frenemy, had grown powerful. His sons, Togodumnus and Caractacus, inherited not just his lands, but his ambition. They ruled the southeast with iron will and painted faces, expanding westward and making themselves the de facto bosses of southern Britain. But their tribal swagger was about to meet Roman steel. Claudius dispatched his invasion force under the command of Aulus Plautius, a seasoned general who had seen more battles than a tavern bard had songs. With him was a young officer named Servius Galba, who would one day become emperor himself, after a few betrayals, backstabs, and a civil war. But that's another scroll. Though the exact moment the Catuvelloni, or, as you stylishly call them, the Cataloni, learned of Rome's brewing invasion remains lost to time, one thing is certain. Ancient intelligence gathering was no joke. Forget satellites and encrypted emails. This was the age of sharp-eyed scouts, gossiping merchants, and the occasional druid with suspiciously good hearing. Roman ships had begun massing near the coast of Gaul, their hulls creaking with anticipation. Local informants, fishermen, traders, and perhaps a few bribed Gauls likely spotted the unusual activity. Word traveled fast, faster than a Roman courier with a deadline. The British chieftains, Togodumnus and Caractacus, received the news and began assembling their warriors in Kent, the closest point to the European mainland and the most logical place to defend. Now, imagine being a Roman soldier from the dry hills of Hispania or the forests of Germania, standing at the edge of the English Channel. The sea stretched endlessly, gray and moody, whispering tales of sea monsters and ghostly fog. Many had never seen the ocean. Some believed Britain was a cursed island, home to witches, giants, and other things that go bump in the mist. And so, panic spread like spilled wine at a Roman banquet. A mutiny broke out. Soldiers refused to board the ships. Some clutched their swords like talismans. Others wept openly. General Aulus Plautius, seasoned but surely exasperated, faced a crisis that no military manual had prepared him for. But Plautius was no ordinary commander. He invoked the authority of Emperor Claudius, the man who had defied expectations to wear the purple robe. According to some accounts, Plautius gave a rousing speech, appealing to Roman honor, duty, and the promise of glory. Whether it was the speech, the threat of punishment, or the allure of loot, the rebellion was quelled. News of the mutiny reached the Catuvellani chieftains. They laughed, toasted their mead, and assumed the Romans had chickened out. Confident that the invasion was off, they disbanded their defensive forces and resumed their plans for expansion. But oh, how wrong they were. Plautius's army was no weekend militia. It was a juggernaut. 4 legions, thousands of auxiliaries, cavalry, engineers, and enough logistical support to build a city, or flatten one. They crossed the channel and began their march inland, encountering resistance, skirmishes, and the occasional British ambush that smelled more of bravado than strategy. And then they reached the river Medway. As the sun spilled golden light across the dew-soaked plains, General Plautius stood on the southern bank of the Medway, his cloak fluttering like a banner of inevitability. He squinted across the river, his veteran eyes scanning the terrain with the precision of a man who'd fought from the Danube to the Rhine. On the far bank, the Catui warriors had assembled. Togodumnus and Caractacus, brothers, leaders, and proud sons of Cunobelinus, stood at the helm of their forces. Their war paint glistened, their spears bristled, and their confidence was as high as a druid on mushrooms. They had chosen their ground well. The river was wide, fast, and unbridged. Dense forests flanked their position, perfect for ambushes. They had spent days preparing, digging traps, sharpening stakes, and whispering war chants to the trees. They knew the Romans would struggle to cross without a bridge, and they were ready to turn the river into a graveyard. But Plautius wasn't some overconfident centurion with a shiny helmet and no plan. He was a strategist. He studied the enemy's deployment like a chessboard. He noted the tribal formations, fierce but undisciplined. He knew that while the Britons could fight like lions, they lacked the stamina and cohesion for prolonged engagements. His scouts reported weaknesses, gaps in the flanks, overconfidence in terrain, and a reliance on ambush tactics. Plautius understood that if he could neutralize the terrain advantage, the battle would tilt in Rome's favor. Charging headlong into the river would be suicide. But Plautius had something better than brute force. He had Roman engineering, discipline, and a few tricks up his sleeve. The Roman invasion force, now restored and resolute, sailed across the channel and landed at Richborough, Rutupae, near the mouth of the river Stour. No opposition greeted them. The British had gambled and lost. Richborough was a dream landing site, flat terrain, access to fresh water, and proximity to inland routes. The Romans quickly established a beachhead, securing supplies and fortifying their position. They moved westward along firm ground, avoiding the treacherous marshes of East Kent. The geography was their silent ally, shielding their right flank and allowing swift movement. Initial resistance flared at Canterbury. British warriors, including the Dobunni who had marched from afar, launched delaying attacks. Their goal? Stall the Romans long enough for other tribes to regroup at the river Medway. The river Medway was no gentle stream. It was a formidable barrier, flanked by dense forests and uneven terrain. The British chose it as their battleground, hoping to trap the Romans in a watery grave. On the west bank, British forces assembled. Their headquarters was established on high ground south of Hulling, offering a commanding view of the battlefield. It was a textbook choice: elevation, visibility, and defensibility. Plautius, ever the tactician, conducted a meticulous survey. His scouts reported a sizable British presence. He positioned his legions with surgical precision, exploiting every weakness in the enemy's deployment. The Roman army was divided into 4 legions: Legion Hispana, the veterans of Spain, placed on the right wing. Their job? Hold the line and flank the enemy. Their reputation alone could make a barbarian reconsider his life choices. Legio XIV Gemina, led by Gnaeus Hidius Geta, a name that sounds like it should come with its own theme music. Positioned at the right center, they were the backbone of the formation, ready to reinforce or strike as needed. Legio X Valeria Victrix anchored the left wing, preventing encirclement. Their history of decisive victories made them ideal for this crucial role. Legio Sec Augusta, reliable, steadfast, and led by none other than Vespasian, the future emperor. Vespasian was modest, practical, and beloved by his troops. Suetonius described him as a man of the people, earning loyalty through action, not pomp. With all troops deployed, the Romans launched their signature tactic, the feint. Legionaries rushed to the riverbank, pretending to cross. British warriors scrambled to intercept, and then the Romans simply turned back. Now pause for a sec. Join the front lines of history and power. Welcome to European battle, where epic clashes, legendary warriors, and untold stories come alive. By subscribing and turning on notifications, you're not just joining a channel, You're stepping into a world of thrilling battles, strategic brilliance, and jaw-dropping historical drama. From ancient empires to modern warfare, we deliver cinematic storytelling, expert insights, and exclusive content that will leave you breathless. Why subscribe? Unlock premium battle breakdowns and rare historical footage. Be the first to witness new episodes and live events. Join a passionate community of history lovers and strategy minds. Fuel your curiosity with facts, theories, and fierce debates. Don't just watch history, live it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss a moment of the action. Your front row seat to Europe's greatest battles is just one click away. European battle, where legends clash. Claudius, the Roman general, knew the British had fortified the Medway's west bank, but he also knew something else. The river had weak spots, and the Betavians, they were born to exploit them. Under cover of mist and silence, the Betavians slipped into the water, bypassing the main British defenses. They emerged like ghosts at a poorly defended stretch of the river, and all Hades broke loose. The British were caught mid-yawn. Many warriors were still in the fields, tending to sheep or sharpening spears. The riverbank was only half-manned. The Betavians struck fast, targeting the British vanguard, especially the chariots. Now, British chariots were the pride of the battle. Claudius ordered a diversion. While one contingent feigned a frontal assault, another, likely led by auxiliaries trained in amphibious tactics, crossed the river at a hidden ford upstream. These troops, possibly Betavians, Dutch warriors with a flair for swimming and armor, launched a surprise attack on the Britons' flank. Chaos erupted. The Britons, expecting a river blockade, suddenly found themselves fighting on two fronts. Their ambushes were bypassed, their formations disrupted. Togodumnus fought valiantly but was wounded. Caractacus rallied his men, but the Roman tide was relentless. Confusion rippled through the British ranks. Was this the attack? Was it a trick? The commanders hesitated. Morale wavered. Meanwhile, the real assault began. The Betavians, elite auxiliaries known for their aquatic prowess, swam downstream to a ford. Silent, swift, and deadly, they crossed the river and launched a surprise attack on the British flank. The trap was sprung. The British, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. The Romans surged forward, exploiting the chaos. The Battle of Medway had truly begun. Fast, intimidating, and perfect for scattering infantry. But the Betavians had studied their playbook. They didn't aim for the warriors, they went for the horses. In minutes, the battlefield turned into a chaotic mess of injured beasts, overturned chariots, and warriors forced to abandon their wheels and fight on foot. The British cohesion shattered, their mobility was gone, and the Romans hadn't even crossed the river in full force yet. With the Betavians holding the line and chaos blooming on the west bank, Claudius made his move. He ordered the Second Legion, led by the stoic and practical Vespasian, yes, that Vespasian, future emperor and builder of the Colosseum, to cross the river. They found a narrow ford and began wading through. It was a perilous moment. The British had the terrain advantage and the Romans were vulnerable mid-crossing. But Roman discipline was unmatched. Shields raised, formations tight, they pushed through the onslaught. Once across, they formed a shield wall, a landing zone for the rest of the army. British warriors surged, but the Romans held. The plan was working. One by one, the legions crossed. 14th Legion, under Gnaeus Hidius Geta, attacked the main British force to the north. 9th Legion, veterans of Hispania, reinforced the center and west, guarding Geta's rear. 20th Legion stayed on the east bank, protecting the left flank from southern attacks. Each move was calculated, each formation precise. The British launched charge after charge, but Roman tactics, the tortoise, the cohort, the pila, turned the tide. The battlefield became a maelstrom of hand-to-hand combat. Spears clashed, shields slammed, and the air rang with the cries of warriors. The Romans, clad in lorica segmentata, fought with gladii and javelins, pushing forward like a living wall. The British, brave and wild, fought with heart, but heart alone could not break Roman steel. As dusk fell, the fighting didn't stop. This was rare. Ancient battles were usually decided by sunset, but not Medway. The British refused to yield. The Romans refused to retreat. The clash continued into the second day, a testament to the British tenacity and Roman resolve. Eventually, exhaustion began to take its toll. The British, fighting without rest, lost cohesion. The The Romans, though weary, pressed forward with machine-like precision. The last British resistance gathered on high ground south of Harling. It was a desperate stand, the kind sung about in bardic halls. Togodumnus, the British chieftain, possibly led this final defense. He was either slain in battle or died soon after, his legacy sealed in blood. Caractacus, his brother, escaped north, rallying remnants of the British force. The Romans encircled and crushed the defenders. Geta, commanding the 14th Legion, received honors for his role. The Medway crossing was secured. The British army was scattered. With the river conquered, the Roman war machine rolled deeper into Britain. But conquest was only the beginning. Governing Britain proved far more complex. The terrain was rugged, the tribes were fractious, and Rome had no clear exit strategy. Claudius had his victory and his triumph in Rome, but the island would bleed Rome for decades. Caractacus fled to Wales, becoming a symbol of resistance. He waged guerrilla war until 50 AD, when he was betrayed by Queen Cardamandua of the Brigantes. Handed over to Rome, he was paraded in chains, but when given the chance to speak before Claudius, he delivered a speech so noble, so dignified, that the emperor spared his life. Caractacus lived out his days in Rome. A prisoner, yes, but one who had earned the respect of his captors. Coming up next, Battle of Mons Gropius, 83 AD Scotland. This is the story of the battle that almost broke the Roman advance. A clash of cultures, courage, and cunning, where the hills echoed with war cries and the fate of northern Britain hung in the balance. Stay with us, and that's a wrap. If you love this tale of river raids, imperial ambition, and heroic last stands, don't forget to follow us, subscribe. Click the notification bell so you never miss another epic drop from our channel.